Howdy, cadre. I'm just gonna keep going at this point. It's still night. Still same day Earl for me. I should probably worry about food. I guess I finished talking about sleep issues. Well, let's recap quick. Overactive brain. Can be thinking about personal issues in my life or global issues in the news. I take that stuff so personally. In fact, one of my coworkers and I came up with a phrase for that. Hip emo. Combination of hippie and emo. I think she was prone to using those words kind of as insults. I mean, I don't know if she intended them as insults, really. I forget where she was from. I think she was Hispanic of some sort. Anyways, that's not important to the story at all. I don't know why I'm trying to categorize her racially. I guess I do know why. Not to paint any picture or to create a stereotype, but to try to explain that she came to America as kind of an outsider, but had spent plenty of time in America, so she was familiar with her culture, but certain aspects of it were newer or foreign to her, and I think both hippies and emos fell into that category, that she was never really either. And found both of them kind of strange. And yeah, I have I guess I kind of have both a love-hate relationship with both of those terms, hippie and emo. In both cases, I feel like they started out kind of as attitudes. And came to be known as like styles. It's interesting to think about. It's kind of an externalization of meaning that I think hippies you know, coalesced around, well, it's complicated because I think it really started out anti-war with aspects, you know, counterculture aspects in general. I'm going the wrong way, but I'm trying to get out from this. I want to get up there, I guess. I'm gonna cross the channel. Is there a better way up? Some sort of staircase? I don't see one. Well, I guess this isn't the way to cross the... Oh, geez. Dodge and weave, dodge and weave. Oh, not quick enough. Save the sprites. Save the sprites. Oh, this is bad. This is bad news. Trying to do a sprite rescue with all these guys after me. Oh, and the lag. Okay. Oh, oh, oh. Save the sprites. Don't die. Save the sprites. Okay, I guess we did it. Victory. Okay. Accomplished our goals. I guess I go back to this footbridge. Didn't I just cross this? Oh, I ended up... No, I'm confused. I don't know what I did. Hippie, emo. Okay, hippies. It started out as, you know, like anti-Vietnam stuff with aspects of counterculture. Certainly the dress, there was an anti-norm, anti-square aspect. And yeah, so there was an embracing of new and different forms of clothing, more creative expression, embracing of new art forms and bright colors. And just the word psychedelic is interesting because it bridges from those forms of art forms and clothing styles into drugs. And the gathering was not just about protest movements, civil rights movements, you know, and that ties into the counterculture too. But also, you know, music was important. As part of all that, and the concert scenes and outdoor concerts, and then hand in hand with that, you've got the drug use, which, you know, does tie into the counterculture idea too, and questioning norms. But yeah, the Summer of Love, and I blame Charles Manson quite a bit because a lot of those same elements attracted him, and while all those big protest movements were happening, he was creating his family, his kind of mini cult of violent offenders, and you know, for the most part, hippies were non-violent, but he found these marginalized youths, often women who had daddy issues, and then, you know, with a few men that he could trust and control. Whoa, almost walked off the edge there. To perpetrate violence for him and help manipulate and cultivate his family. And, you know, he used the drugs to weaken their will and make them more pliable. And anyways, I'm getting off track, but I blame him a lot for changing the public perception of hippies, because that's really where a lot of it comes from. And there's other aspects, you know, when you think about music festivals, Woodstock, that's where you start to get the idea of the dirty hippie coming into play. And there are other people who popularized that stereotype, like, yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with George Carlin. I feel like he's a genius. He's a like modern philosopher in a lot of ways, but his he had a character called the Hippy Dippy Weatherman that popularized some of the stereotypes about hippies. And is kind of what linked the idea of long hair with being dirty. I mean, again, the outdoor music festivals and once the Summer of Love attracted so many hippies to LA, you know, it was a combination of not just protesters and people that believed in true or free love and the music scene and stuff, but also homeless people and drug addicts, and so all those forces kind of combined that summer, and yeah, and kind of an explosion that caused the conflation of all those ideas and led to the concretization, the formalization of the hippie stereotype. And I you know, I think a lot of it's unfair and regretful, because initially there were a lot of ideals that the hippies espoused. that were, yeah, abused by their opponents, latched on to by their opponents. And so, like, the idea of free love came from the idea, I think, initially, that there just, you know, there should be more love in the world. There should be more. We should care for all people of all races. And an aspect of that was anti-marriage. That you don't just keep your love for only your immediate family, but try and share it with your neighbors and stuff. And they're, you know, to some extent the hippies did it to themselves. That you know, there were, I'm sure, promiscuous hippies that were sleeping with people they just met, and but yeah, I think that the idea of free love started out more innocent, noble, and became misinterpreted just as slutty, basically. I don't use that word very often, but I'm using it to express a concept, not attack somebody specific for any personal choices. So I think it's somewhat reasonable in that usage. I apologize if it triggers you. Certainly don't know who you are, other than probably a bot. Just based on probability. But yeah, the idea of long hair being associated with dirtiness, and I got to admit that there's some, I don't want to say sexism, but there is a gender bias built into that, because I am male and I have a perspective as a male, and I had my hair long for a long time, and I also consider myself a hippie at heart in a lot of ways, because a lot of these ideals that I'm talking about I agree with. Especially the anti-war, anti-violence part. And opposition to police brutality, certainly. Anti-discrimination, anti-fascism, anti-corporatism, pro-creativity. Yeah, there's a little stripe I'm missing down here. Maybe I'll go after that now. And, you know, drug use is a complicated one, because I think obviously drugs are a double-edged sword. I certainly think that one of our hypocrisies as a culture is that alcohol is legal. You know, you turn 21, you You can buy it almost anywhere. Oop. Whoop. Jeez, double. And you know, I'm not sure how I feel about the age limit, because I think at 21, like, we have to be honest that high schoolers figure out ways well, okay. Whether it's just through siblings or older students at school, or what have you, high schoolers get their hands on alcohol, and then it becomes this weird initiation thing where you're sneaking around to do it, you're lying to your parents about it, you're kind of hiding it from society to get away with it, and that means you're experiencing alcohol in a way that's not a safe and controlled environment. So it ends up interacting with all these other parts of society, like yeah, I should have just eaten bread. You know, it's teenagers experimenting with alcohol and potentially other drugs, and exploring sexuality, sexual encounters, guys figuring out you know, friendship and conflicts. And alcohol is certainly one of the drugs that can make you more violent. But yeah, I grew up during the Say No to Drugs era. Nancy Bush had a big... She was First Lady. She had a big push. Her pet project was Say No to Drugs, but I think one of the biggest failures of that is it treated all drugs as equal. It simplified it into a binary, like, these are the bad drugs, these are the acceptable drugs. And while alcohol was acceptable, everything else got grouped together as just bad. And so, you know, they refer to marijuana as a gateway drug, but part of that effect is psychological in the way the Say No to Drugs campaign was so oversimplified that if you shake off the mindset that society has taught you, that all drugs are bad, really bad things will happen if you try drugs, and then you do try marijuana, the result is that you have a crisis of disbelief. Hey, I did it. Or a crisis of faith, to just say it more general, that you're like, well, this isn't so bad. Society lied to me, you know, my parents or the police or the TV, whatever, you know, they lied to me. I've just experienced this now, and it's really not as bad as they made it out to be. Wow, this is kind of annoying. So the gateway, so to speak, is that you've just stepped from all drugs are bad to, you know, I tried this one and it's obviously not so bad. And it can lead you to, I mean, potentially, this could be a psychological result of that, to think, well, society's lied to me. Let's try some other drugs. And when that gate, you know, when that fence, that wall is built so strongly, then you think of drugs in a binary fashion that, you know, they're either good or bad. And then if you try one that's not so bad, it leads to the idea that maybe they're not all that bad. You know, if they've lied to me about how bad this drug is, maybe they've lied to me about how bad other drugs are. So I think there are other ways that it serves as a gateway drug. Certainly because they're all illegal, you know, some people may deal in multiple drugs. Because if you're going to sell one illegal substance, you might as well sell others. So the subculture can deal in it, and you know, it's not true across the board. You've got some people that just sell weed, and some people that just sell pills that weren't prescribed to you, and some people that sell just harder drugs. But then you also have drug dealers that, you know, can get you whatever you want. Maybe they don't have it on you, but they have contacts or whatever. And because it's all unregulated and tax-free, once you're exposed to the black market, you know, then you're aware of the black market. And access to harder drugs is easier. But I don't want you to think I'm pro-drugs or something. It's just, it's part of the whole greater picture that I've been trying to talk about since I started my channel. Binary thinking is bad, you know. Whether it's political, thinking somehow all the views, all the perspectives, all the movements can be characterized just as left-leaning or right-leaning, you know, red or blue. That binary thinking's bad, and, you know, black versus white, that's bad. It ignores all the colors of the spectrum that fall between those two extremes. And I've talked about race before. I don't like the terms white and black when used for skin color, because they're just, in my mind, they're blatant lies. Caucasians are not white. If you're talking about science or art or physics, white is all colors combined. Looking for the sun, because the Minecraft sun is pretty darn white. All the colors combined to give you white light. That's the full range of the color spectrum in illumination terms. And when you lack all light, you have pure darkness. That's black. And certainly African American skin tone is not pure black. And neither is Caucasian skin tone pure white. By using those extreme terms, we focus on the extreme. We make the difference more extreme. That's kind of my thesis, and it also conflates it with cultural ideas that light is good, dark is bad, light is pure, shadow is scary. You know, none of that stuff is related directly to skin tone. But we convey all those ideas in simple single words when we reduce the spectrum down to the two extremes of white and black. And even the phrase black and white thinking encapsulates that idea that you're ignoring the grays, or in this case of skin tone, the range of tonal skin expressions based on varying levels of melanin, or, you know, alterations of melanin. I was just debating whether to use the word mutation there. It blew my mind when I learned that redheads are a mutation. It's accepted as normal. I mean, it is normal. It apparently leads to other differences, like their sense of pain and temperature is different. Just by a matter of degree or severity. Cool. Well, I filled in the south part of this map, I believe. Yeah, there's a couple dots, but those could be little bits of sand or stuff on roofs. I don't know. I'll head up here just to kind of double check. Yeah, and I don't want to offend any redheads or anything. I'm not using the term mutation in a derogatory way. Just like when I try and talk about skin tone, I'm not trying to pass judgment. If anything, I'm trying to overcome the judgments that I think are almost institutionalized within our language. That's my focus. That's the main points I'm trying to express. And yeah, I was debating even bringing up the mutation of redheads because they have a different type of melanin from the rest of us, and that actually means they're kind of on a different spectrum from most races. And I don't even like the term races. I think that the dual meaning of the term race adds to part of the problem. Like, it's not a competition. We're not trying to get to a finish line quicker than the other races. Like, what are we racing? We're the same species. We can all interbreed. If anything, blood type seems to be a bigger separator. Yeah. Seems to be more important for health reasons. And there's other differences. I mean, the whole point of the varying ranges of melanin is that we react differently to the sun. People with more melanin are better adapted to being out in the sun. I mean, that's a subtle difference. but it doesn't matter much in modern life. I mean, you know, African Americans don't visibly change when they spend a lot of time in the sun like Caucasian Americans do. But, you know, either can be good farmers. Maybe Caucasians would be better served to get more sunscreen and, you know, wear floppy hats and but that's still, it's a personal thing. Do you want to turn red? Are you worried about well, or tan, obviously. I mean, that's about prolonged exposure versus quick exposure. Or yeah, dramatic short-term exposure versus controlled long-term exposure. Are you worried about skin cancer? You know, that doesn't have much to do with race. It's got to do with biology, and the human body is amazing at adapting, I think, regardless of your race. So might be starting at different points, might be more sensitive to certain things rather than others. Wow, I got way off topic. I was talking about hippie-mo and drug use and all sorts of things. So yeah, there was a big anti-hippie focus by the government and the media, and because of the Watergate debacle and the release of Nixon's tapes that he was recording conversations that he was having in private, or in the White House or whatever. Yeah, it was revealed that he had two big hatreds. The hippies and the blacks. He hated them both. And they represented different elements. He conflated the idea of African Americans with violence and inner city crime, and he had a big focus on fighting crack cocaine, which he associated with the blacks. And he used a worse word than that, so I try to use African American. I try to avoid the term black because of what I just explained. But he used worse words in private than any of those. And I think it's important to think about the differences. The melanin blessed is probably the most scientifically accurate. Well, blessed is the melanin rich. Those with high melanin content in their skin. See, it gets away from you pretty quickly. Part of the reason the term black is so useful is it's simple, it's global, it's perception based, so it's pretty easy to apply, even if sometimes inaccurate. Yeah, talk to your one black friend if you're confused about what I'm talking about. Yeah. People of color have varying levels of melanin, and some of them can pass for white at times and in certain situations and with certain people. And that in itself is a weird phenomenon that, depending on who you're around, you can be perceived as either white or a person of color. It's very strange. And yeah, even the census is strange because it's gotten a lot better at allowing people to self-identify and to help figure out what's going on, especially when you have like so-called Latinx people, Hispanic people, and mixed race people. And it's strange to me how Hispanic is used kind of like an added or a separate spectrum, almost like an added layer. A layer, that's a pretty good description. On the census, you can identify simply by race, but Hispanic is for some reason treated kind of differently. And then they ask you to be more specific, because Hispanic can mean like descended from Spaniards, descended from Mexican or American natives. Yeah, it gets really complicated, and so now the census asks, like, what do you mean by Hispanic? Puerto Rican or Central American or Southern American or yeah, a lot of complexity. But yeah, then Nixon hated the hippies too, and he associated them with the marijuana and some of the other drugs. And his big push for a war on drugs was, in a way, an excuse to crack down on the countercultural elements, the problems that he saw in urban areas, and the anti-war movement. And yeah, drugs have been used kind of as an excuse for police brutality for a long time. Stop and frisk, this searching of private property, especially vehicles, sometimes just based on smell, which is a rather personal and hard to define, hard to nail down. Thing. I mean, as a cop, it's a great excuse as to why you asked to search somebody's car or whatever. Like, well, I smelled something funny. All right. I want to get out of this. Okay. Hey, playground. Under a highway? That seems like a good place to sell drugs. Speaking of, it almost reaches up there. Oh, there is a stairway to it. Eek. Okay. Hey, more pretty little trees. So yeah, I am speaking a little bit more freely about drugs. Find it interesting that so many states have legalized the pot, including my own. It's a pretty big cultural shift in the last 10 years or so. And there's a lot of states still struggling with that. And it's still illegal on a federal level, but that's partly why I find it so interesting that, like, how is it, like, legal in the state but illegal in the whole country, but so, like, state police don't really worry about it, but then, you know, federal police like the DEA do, but then, you know, there's cooperation between the different levels of police. So, like, are the state police often reporting it to the DEA? I mean, and even then, like, it depends on the circumstance, right? Is it in state or is it crossing state lines? Is it a major operation involving other criminal aspects, like other forms of drugs or guns or human trafficking, or, you know, other issues that are clearly illegal on both federal and state levels? There's a lot of complexity, but well, I guess just one of the points I was making is that it's a strange hypocrisy in my mind that alcohol is considered such a normal part of society, but there's so much taboo around marijuana when it really seems as harmless to me. I don't know. It's a tricky situation because they both alter your mental state, impair your judgment. But I think the biggest difference in my mind is I'm very violence sensitive. And wow, I haven't been this high on a road in a long time. What I wanted to, okay. That's like an old run-down road. That's pretty cool. Oh, I should end the episode soon. Wow, I'm almost done with the map, though. Oh! Insert catchphrase here.